In the vast expanse of the Pacific, where naval power shapes the fate of nations, few figures loom as large, or as tragically, as Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a man both visionary and controversial, a commander torn between loyalty to his homeland and a deep understanding of the looming storm that war with the United States would unleash. Today, we dive into the life, rise, legacy, and dramatic death of the man who masterminded Pearl Harbor, and who believed from the very beginning that Japan could not win the war it was about to start. This is the story of Isoroku Yamamoto. Isoroku Yamamoto was born on April 4, 1884, in the small village of Nagaoka, in Japan's Niigata Prefecture. The world he entered was one of transformation. Japan had emerged from centuries of isolation and was racing to modernize, to industrialize, to build an empire capable of standing beside the West. His birth name was actually Isoroku Takano. Isoroku, in an old Japanese dialect, meant 56. It was a reference to his father's age at the time of his birth. Yamamoto would not take the name Yamamoto until later in life, when he was adopted into the Yamamoto family, an honorific tradition that gave him inheritance rights and a place among a respected samurai lineage. From his earliest years, Isoroku stood out. He was intelligent, analytical, and drawn to strategy. But his path changed forever in 1901 when he enrolled at the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy. The Navy was modern, forward-looking, and scientific. Everything a sharp young mind like his could thrive in. As a cadet, Yamamoto found himself on the front line of one of Japan's most defining conflicts, the Russo-Japanese War that took place between 1904 and 1905. He served aboard the cruiser Nishin during the Battle of Tsushima, one of the most decisive naval victories in modern history. But triumph came at a cost. During the battle, Yamamoto was severely wounded. He lost 2 fingers on his left hand and suffered shrapnel injuries to his legs. These scars would stay with him, not just physically, but mentally. He had witnessed firsthand the terrifying power of modern naval warfare, and these experiences began shaping a belief that would guide the rest of his life. Future wars would be decided by air power, not battleships. In 1919, Yamamoto was sent to the United States to study at Harvard University. This experience would profoundly influence him. He traveled widely, across the U.S., studying its culture, its finances, and, most importantly, its industrial capacity. He understood something that many in Japan refused to see. If Japan ever went to war with the United States, Japan was doomed. Yamamoto watched American factories operate at a scale Japan could never match. He saw their oil reserves, their steel production, their manufacturing power, the American people's ability to endure hardship and supply vast armies and fleets. When he returned home, he urged caution. Japan, he insisted, must avoid war with the United States at all costs. His warnings were largely ignored. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Yamamoto rose steadily through the Navy. He became known as a brilliant strategist, a reformer, and, at times, a rebel. He challenged outdated traditions, opposed building more battleships, and pushed instead for aircraft carriers and naval aviation. At a time when many senior officers saw planes as mere support tools, Yamamoto saw the future. Isoroku Yamamoto immersed himself in aviation theory. He was instrumental in developing Japan's carrier fleet and helped shape the training of the elite aviators who would later carry out the attack on Pearl Harbor. But his modernization efforts weren't his only controversy. He openly opposed the 1940 Tripartite Pact with Germany and Italy, arguing it would drag Japan into a war it couldn't win. He warned that such a conflict would be disastrous. His opposition earned him death threats from ultranationalists, but his brilliance and Japan's desperate need for skilled naval leadership kept him safe. In 1939, he became the commander-in-chief of the Combined Fleet, the highest operational command in the Japanese Navy. By 1941, the situation was dire. Japan's war in China was bleeding resources. The United States had imposed oil embargoes. Japan's leaders believed the nation must expand or die. As the government drifted toward war, Yamamoto found himself in a painful position. He opposed war, but if war was inevitable, he believed Japan needed a powerful opening strike to buy time. So he conceived a plan unlike anything the world had ever seen: a surprise attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. His goal was not to conquer America. He knew that was impossible. Instead, he hoped a decisive blow would force the United States to negotiate peace before its industrial might could overwhelm Japan. The plan was bold, risky, and unprecedented. And on December 7, 1941, Yamamoto's vision unfolded. As American sailors awoke to explosions and rising smoke, 6 Japanese carriers launched wave after wave of aircraft. The attack sank or damaged 8 battleships and destroyed hundreds of aircraft. In Tokyo, Yamamoto waited anxiously for the report. When the message finally arrived, he knew the attack had succeeded. But even in victory, Yamamoto understood the deeper truth. He is famously quoted, though the exact phrasing is debated, as saying, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." He knew the clock was now ticking against Japan. After Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto sought to destroy the remaining American carriers. This led to the Battle of Midway in June 1942, a battle Yamamoto believed would secure Japan's dominance in the Pacific. But Midway became a catastrophe. American codebreakers intercepted Japan's plans. Ambush met ambition. 4 Japanese carriers, the Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were destroyed. Japan lost hundreds of its best pilots, and the momentum of the war shifted permanently. Yamamoto was devastated. He took responsibility, though he was pressured by Tokyo to continue projecting confidence. He reorganized the fleet, oversaw defensive operations, and tried desperately to slow America's advance. But he knew the war was slipping away. By 1943, American forces were fighting their way through the Pacific. Yamamoto decided to make a morale-boosting tour of frontline bases. His flight path, however, was intercepted by American codebreakers. President Franklin Roosevelt approved an extraordinary plan to assassinate Yamamoto while he was in the air. On April 18, 1943, U.S. Army Air Force's P-38 fighters intercepted his transport plane near Bougainville. In a brief and violent engagement, Yamamoto's aircraft was shot down. He died still strapped into his seat, his sword at his side. Japan was stunned. Losing Yamamoto, its most respected strategist, was a devastating blow to morale. He was given a state funeral. He was posthumously promoted to Marshal Admiral. And even his American opponents acknowledged his brilliance and his integrity. Isoroku Yamamoto remains one of the most complex figures of World War II. He was a man who understood that Japan could not defeat the United States, yet designed the very strike that launched the Pacific War. A naval officer who pushed for modern aviation, yet was beaten by the very intelligence and air power he predicted would shape the future. A loyal servant of Japan, who believed that war would ultimately destroy the nation he loved. Today, historians view Yamamoto not simply as the architect of Pearl Harbor, but as a tragic strategist, someone caught in the machinery of nationalism, circumstance, and geopolitical inevitability. Isoroku Yamamoto's life is a lesson in ambition, innovation, and the heavy price of leadership. He was brilliant, determined, and far-sighted, yet ultimately powerless to stop the tide of history. Whether seen as a visionary or a doomed militarist, his legacy continues to echo across the Pacific Ocean. If you enjoyed this deep-dive biography and want to see more stories of leaders, wars, and moments that shaped our world, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching.